Who are the best premiership teams of all time? We're going to count them down from 22 to 1. Why 22? Well, because I just like the number, that's why. There have been 128 premiership sides in the VFL/AFL, and with deep analysis and cross-referencing all 128 teams, I've compiled the official list. I use my own knowledge from having attended over 500 games of AFL football, combined with anecdotal, statistical and written accounts from the early years to rank all 128 premiership teams in order. I take into account the standard of the competition at the time so as to not disadvantage teams from the past who were not competing in the national competition. The most recent premiership side, the Brisbane Lions of 2024, I have at number 87. And if you want to see the whole list from numbers 23 through to 128, you can check it out in the description bar below. Number 22, Hawthorn 1986. Just when it seemed the era was coming to an end after losing the 1985 grand final, the experienced, ruthless Hawks bounced back in 1986 to finish minor premiers with 18 wins and crush Carlton by 42 points in the grand final. A young Jason Dunstall kicked 77 goals in 1986 compared to his over 130 goals in 1988 and 1989, which is essentially the difference between where the rankings of those premiership teams were, which we'll see soon, and this one. Number 21, Geelong 2022. Written off as too old and too slow, the 2022 Cats bounced back with the best attack in the competition, the best defence, a percentage of 149 and a thumping grand final victory by over 80 points. They were bigger, stronger, more versatile and more consistent and had no obvious weaknesses. Number 20, Carlton 1907. A great side that would become even better 1 year later. This side topped the ladder with a percentage of 156. Coached by the first VFL coach, Jack Worrell, the Carlton 1907 side was one of the greatest teams of all time. Number 19, Melbourne 1959. A Demons super side from their golden era. Not talked about in the same breath as 1955 and 1956, but this side, along with 1960, were roughly at the same level. The team had a 15-win, 4-loss, 1-draw record from 20 games, winning 2 finals by 44 and 37 points. Number 18, Essendon 1911. Under the guidance of Jack Worrell, who previously led the Blues to 3 consecutive premierships, Essendon amassed 17 wins, 2 losses and a draw with a percentage of 173. The 2 losses were by 3 points and 8 points. They very nearly could have gone unbeaten. Unlucky not to be higher. Number 17, Melbourne 1960. This Melbourne side amassed 16 wins and 4 losses, but with the players at their disposal, that record arguably didn't do them justice. This was a side that could have easily gone through the season losing only 1 or 2 games. In their 7th consecutive grand final, they kept Collingwood to only 2 goals. Number 16, Collingwood 1928. Slightly behind their 1929 and 1927 sides, the 1928 side was one of the best of all time, but perhaps not that far ahead of many of the other contenders in that season. Finished with 17 wins, 3 losses and a draw, and a percentage of 132, right smack bang in the middle of the Magpies' most famous era. They won the grand final by 33 points, and Gordon Coventry kicked 89 goals. Number 15, Essendon 1985. Sheedy's team peaked to such an extent that they blew the opposition away with a 21-win, 3-loss record, and they were hailed at the time as one of the great sides. With no apparent weaknesses, a top ruckman, on-ballers, options everywhere in attack, and a solid defence, this side ranks as one of the greats. However, their 3 losses were all by big margins, which takes a little away from them, but I still rate them at number 15. Number 14, Carlton 1979. With a 21-win, 3-loss record and a percentage of 139, with all their 3 losses being narrow and spaced throughout the year, this team didn't have any obvious weaknesses. They nearly blew it in the grand final, winning by just 5 points, but their performances through the year were worthy of one of the all-time great sides. A rampant mosquito fleet at the time, as many of their smaller players were nicknamed, with a bevy of big-name stars all over the field. Number 13, Carlton 1995. This side had it all. Experience, hardness, skill, and a willingness to win. Amassing an incredible 23 wins and 2 losses with a percentage of over 140, they played with a professionalism that no club had previously matched. They did not lose to a finalist all year. 15 wins and 0 losses against the other teams in the 8. Their almost unbeatable record that year assures them a high ranking. Number 12, Geelong, 1952. Although other teams have amassed superior records, this Geelong side was still one of the greatest in history. They won the premiership in the middle of an unbeaten run that would stretch to 26 games the following season, and their attacking, free-flowing style of play became a Geelong tradition that they maintain to this day. 18 wins, 2 losses and a draw with a percentage of over 140 was a testament to their greatness. This was Geelong's best ever side until 2007. Number 11, Collingwood, 1927. After losing the grand final in 1925 and 1926, this side was ready to peak. This was the first of 4 consecutive premierships for the Collingwood Football Club. They amassed a 17-win, 3-loss record with many superstars, proving they could be a champion team and a team of champions. With Gordon Coventry kicking 97 goals and his brother winning the Brownlow, this 1927 side featured the Magpies of that era close to their best. Number 10, Hawthorn, 1988. Only behind their 1989 team due to their inferior defence, which conceded 200 points more than the 89 version, this great team was ruthless, skilled and efficient. They amassed a 21-win, 3-loss record. Many believe they peaked in 88, but I believe the Hawks reached absolute zenith a year later. However, the 88 team deserves their ranking as the 10th best team out of 128. Number 9, Melbourne, 1955. Marginally behind the 1956 side, this Melbourne side went with 17 wins, 3 losses and a percentage of 150 and showed the makings of a team that would continue to dominate for years to come. The 1955 Melbourne side was heralded as one of the all-time greats, a great even spread of talent with no reliance on individuals, which was a hallmark of the Norm Smith Melbourne coach teams of that era. Number 8, Carlton, 1908. We're getting into some of the super sides now. This was Carlton's first golden era and they produced 3 great sides, the best of which was the 1908 side. Jack Worrell became the first ever coach and propelled the Blues to 19 wins, 1 loss and a percentage of 174. Old-timers still say this was one of the greatest sides of all time, and no doubt if modern coaching techniques were applied, they would still be hard to beat. Number 7, Geelong, 2011. A dominant team that didn't have any flat spots during the year, finishing with 22 wins, 3 losses and a percentage of 157. The second oldest premiership side in history meant a wealth of mature bodies and experience. They had 3 easy finals wins and they had a good, hard defensive unit. They had more of a long kicking game plan with a defensive edge to it than the flag sides of 2007 and 2009 under the new coach Chris Scott, but perhaps they were a little less dominant overall than the 2007 side, which is ranked 1 spot higher, and we'll get to that now. Number 6, Geelong, 2007. A fantastically dominant team in 2007, winning the grand final by a record margin of 119 points. They had a percentage for the year of over 160 from their 25 games. Only great teams can do that. A team who used skillful attacking corridor midfield play, complemented with a group of players in their mid-20s who had played over 100 games, giving them a perfect mix of youth and experience. 21 wins, 4 losses, a percentage of over 160, and 3 finals wins by a total of 230 points, which is an equal record. There is another team that matched that record. We're going to get to that soon. Number 5, Essendon, 1950. Here was a team that was near invincible. 19 wins, 1 loss, and a percentage of 159. John Coleman was at his peak. Dick Reynolds and Hutchison lurking in this side. This was the best Essendon side in that era. At the time, many rated this side alongside the 1929 Magpies team as the best of all time. Number 4, Hawthorn, 1989. The Hawthorn side of 89 was the best side they had in one of the most powerful eras in history. The Hawks reached their peak in 1989 with 21 wins, 3 losses and a percentage of 149. They had champions everywhere and at their best was simply unstoppable. I rate them number 4 out of 128 sides. They culminated the season with a close grand final win, a courageous grand final win and a famous grand final win. Inexplicably, they did lose to the Brisbane Bears that year. There was an airline strike which might have had an impact on them, but that probably does hold them back a spot. Nevertheless, number 4 of 128 is an exceptional ranking for one of the best teams in the history of the game. Number 3, Melbourne 1956. The D's were at their zenith this year, the best team they've ever had. They amassed 18 wins, 2 losses with a percentage of 149. Coached by VFL, AFL Coach of the Century Norm Smith, and with champion players such as Barassi, Adams, Cordner, Beckwith leading the way, the 1956 Melbourne side was their best side in the most dominant era that one club has had in VFL, AFL history. A side that could turn it on at will. Many old-timers suggest this was the type of team who could have gone undefeated. Number 2, Collingwood 1929. This team went 19 wins, 1 loss over 20 matches with a percentage of 159.5. They are the only team in the history of the game to be undefeated in the home and away season. They had champions in every line and were regarded as the greatest combination to have played up to that point. Many Collingwood fans label them as the best ever side. I put them at number 2. A 62-point loss to Richmond in the finals cost them the number 1 position on my list. Gordon Coventry was the first person to kick 100 goals. He kicked 124, and the Pies completed the treble with Albert Collier winning the Brownlow medal. Now we get to number 1. For a team to be number 1, there are really 4 categories it needs to tick off, and only one premiership team in the history of the game can successfully tick off these 4 categories. Number 1, no more than 2 losses for the season, so either 0, 1 or 2 losses. Number 2, a percentage of over 150 from all their games combined, which is my cut-off statistic for what I deem to be a super side. Every finals win they have must be by a big margin. They must have emphatic victories in all finals games, and there cannot be any finals losses. And any losses the team does have during the season must be narrow by a small margin. So the number 1 team of all time, Essendon of the year 2000. This team earned the right to be called the greatest in VFL AFL history with 24 wins, 1 loss, which was the most amount of wins ever recorded in a season. This actually extends to 29 wins and 1 loss when the pre-season premiership is taken into account. A percentage of 164 from 25 matches, winning 3 finals by an equal record combined 230 points, with margins of 125, 45 and 60, which was exactly the same combined finals winning margin as what Geelong had in 2007. The Bombers of 2000 had a percentage just versus the other finalists of 160%, which is about 20% higher than any other team in the modern era has managed against the other finalists in the season in which they won the premiership. At no stage did they look like losing, with even the 1 loss they did have being narrow. For those that remember, the Bulldogs had to tactically change the way the sport was played with an quote-unquote ultra flood, and even then, they only just won. The Essendon team of 2000 did everything you could ask in order for them to be called the best premiership side of all time. What do you think of the official list? Let me know in the comments, and have a great day.